Hello there everybody, Fast Lego Studios here, and welcome back guys to week number 3 of building up a Lego life-sized Captain Rex sculpture. This week's episode, I've got quite a lot of interesting things planned, so without further ado guys, let's jump right into it. Alright guys, and jumping right the way into week number 3 of building up Captain Rex. This week's episode is going to be slightly different, and by what I mean there is I've noticed that in my parts inventory, I am running extremely low on these Lego corner plates and 1x2 Lego plates. And what that essentially means is from this point forward, those two plates are very essential to continue the construction of the Lego Captain Rex helmet. And when you kind of combine that with the Lego stores still being closed, I really am not having too much of an opportunity to go ahead and get parts to continue this build. And until the Lego stores open back up, what I'll be going ahead and doing in this week's episode is essentially to get an idea of how Captain Rex's body is going to look in the further future. So in this week's episode, we're going to be going into Blender and posing a 3D model of Captain Rex to get an understanding of how he's going to look in the Lego room, figuring out the center of gravity, getting an idea of how dynamic is going to be his stance, getting a rendered idea of how he's going to look in the end, and from there on out. So without further ado guys, let's jump right the way into Blender and begin experimenting. Alright guys, I have went ahead and opened up a 3D file in Blender of Captain Rex. I was lucky enough to search the internet to find a already pre-rigged 3D file. Huge shout out to the person whoever did that. This really would help out in the near future once I begin posing this armature. But with all that being said guys, let's begin choosing the pose that I want to get done on this Lego sculpture. Alright guys, I have got the very first pose of Captain Rex all complete. And now this one being the very first pose, it looks really nice, just about to say the least. After looking at a lot of poses of Captain Rex here, I chose this one to be the most iconic, or at least the top 3 of the most iconic poses. Definitely is not the most dynamic of poses, I could argue with that, but I'll try and improve that with the next coming pose. Other things go is that both of Captain Rex's hands are empty. Reason being is because I do not want to overcomplicate the mesh here with attaching both of the twin blasters and then voxelizing it. It would just kind of mess up some things in terms of on how everything would go together. So for the time being, I'm just about leaving out the twin blasters out of the build. But once I go ahead and choose the design that I do want, if you guys can imagine both of the hands having the 2 twin blasters, that is what the final design will look like. But with all that being said guys, let's move on to the next time lapse. Alrighty guys, I have went ahead and got the very next pose of Captain Rex all complete. As you guys can see, this definitely looks a lot nicer than the first pose, and in the end, it definitely has a little bit more liveliness going onto it, as it's much more dynamic in the end. But when we really consider things such as the center of gravity, and take into consideration that this is all going to be built out of Legos, it's definitely something to imagine here, as a lot of stress probably is going to be placed on the bricks all the way at the bottom. So that is something to take into consideration. Those areas in particular definitely is probably going to be the biggest amount of stress, but hopefully the metal armatures that are going to be within this build are going to go ahead and hold up the rest of the build. But with all that being in mind, guys, let's move on to the very next pose. Alright guys, I have went ahead and got the third and final pose of Captain Rex all complete. And now this one does definitely follow the very same guidelines as the first pose that I made, but yet even though it does, it still has that very Captain Rex charm going on. But aside from that there, as goes for the actual kind of pose here, it still has those two vulnerable points being the knees and ankles, though I don't think it's as much of a big problem as it was with the last pose, but in the end result, it still looks really nice and does execute the job of Captain Rex really nicely. But with all that being in mind, guys, let's head out to the outro and pick the pose that I'll be using for Captain Rex. Alright guys, and as goes for the pose that I'll be choosing to build up this Lego sculpture, you guys probably already have been spoiled by the thumbnail of the video, but nonetheless, the pose that I'll be choosing here is pose number 2. Reason being is because pose number 2 definitely offers a really nice kind of range of having a really nice and dynamic pose in combination with having a really lively pose that's just about to like spring out and do something heroic. So that is always a nice kind of sight, and definitely a really good addition to the Lego room. But aside from that there, you guys can see that I've went ahead and got the fully rendered Captain Rex all loaded up. This one being the fully rendered Captain Rex, it has a couple of errors here and there, but it's nothing that I cannot fix. But aside from the pose that I'll be using to build up Captain Rex, the physical model of Lego Captain Rex sadly was not able to have been worked on in this week's episode. Reason being, once again here, is because all the Lego stores have been closed, and I have not gotten an opportunity to get any more parts lately, meaning that I was not able to continue on to building Captain Rex. Hopefully, just hopefully, the Lego stores do open up soon enough so I can go ahead, get more parts, and continue on to building this life-sized Lego sculpture. But with all that being in mind, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and comment down below in the comment section of what are your guys' thoughts on this pose of Captain Rex. And if this were to be your Lego sculpture, what pose would you choose? But with all that being considered, keep on building, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.